See, the way of managing the users, okay, the way of managing the users is same like we have in another databases, right? So in user management, so the today's topic is user management. So the difference is like, like SQL server, okay, like SQL server in Postgres, users are at cluster level or instance level, okay. We do not create users at the database level, okay. So in Postgres, database contain Postgres cluster contains one or more databases, and each database contains one or more schemas, okay. So what are the cluster level or instance level objects in Postgres? We have table spaces. Table spaces are also a cluster level objects or global objects, and users also instance level objects are cluster level objects are global level objects, okay. So it is our responsibility, or it is on us to to give the privileges to these users, to which database user has a correct privilege, to which schema the user must have a usage privilege, and all those things, okay. Depending upon our requirement, we will be granting the privileges on a particular database. Because let's say I have a cluster which contains like 10 to 12 databases, okay. It is not necessary for a particular user to have privileges on the all the databases that are available on the cluster, okay. It is our decision, or it is our requirement to grant the privileges to a user on a particular database, okay. And one more thing that we need to discuss is the concept of in Oracle. If you take Oracle database, the concept of schema, okay, the concept of schema and user, okay, the concept of schema and user both are same. But in Postgres, there is a fundamental difference between user and schema. What are the fundamental differences? Schema is created at database level, right? Schema is created at database level, and user is at instance level or cluster level or global objects, okay. User is at instance level or cluster level, or it is a global object, okay. One more thing is schema contains, okay, schema holds what? Schema holds database objects like tables, functions, procedures, okay. Tables, functions, procedures, sequences, triggers, and all those things will be held by the schema. Whereas in Postgres, user is the person, user is responsible for, okay, user is responsible for creating objects on the schema, okay. User is responsible for creating, okay, user is responsible for creating objects. User is responsible for creating objects on the schema, okay. So this is the fundamental difference, okay. Schema, but in whereas in Oracle, right, a user and schema, there is no fundamental difference. The only difference that we will tell is user, which contains database objects, we call it as a schema in Oracle. Whereas in Postgres, the concept of schema and user is entirely different, okay. It follows in SQL passion, SQL server passion, okay. Schema is at a database level, user is at a instance level, and schema contains database objects, whereas user is a person who creates, okay, user is a person who creates the objects on the schema, okay. And one more thing we need to discuss is there is a concept of user, and there is another concept of role, okay. User and role, we need to know the difference between user and role also. This is also very important topic, okay. So we need to know the difference between user and role, okay. Okay, the thing is, role means, so user, how you will create, right? User you will create with a statement called create user. Create user is a statement which you will use it to create user. How you will create a role? By using a statement called create role. The syntax we will be discussing in a while, okay. Create user statement is used to create the user. Create role statement is used to create the role, okay. What Postgres says is there is no fundamental difference between user and role. So what it tells is the what Postgres documentation tells, like user and role both are same, but there is a little difference. What is right? So whenever you create a role, it comes with a no login privilege. It comes with a no login privilege. But what we can do, we can make the role to login by assigning a login privilege. Okay, we can make, what we can do, we can make role, we can make role to login by assigning a, by assigning login privilege, which means, so let's say in the first moment you have created a role, but you can make this role to login by assigning a login privilege. That we can do it in the Postgres. Okay, but with that we can do it in the Postgres. And one more thing is user, right? So whenever you create a user, it comes with a login privilege. By default it comes with a login privilege. And one more thing is, like when you create a user or when you create a role, the output of that command will be role created. Okay, the output of the Postgres command is role created. So nothing to, like worry about it, because whenever you create a user or whenever you create a role, you will get a output, like the command output of that command will be like role created. Let's see that in a practical way. Okay, what happened to this? 1 minute. Okay, just I have logged into the system now. PSQL. Okay, so how to check the list of users or roles that are available in the system? /du is a command to check the list of users that are available in the Postgres cluster. Okay, so now I'm creating a user. Create user. I'm creating a user with the name Arman. Create user Arman with password. Okay, with password Arman123, with password Arman123. So that, see what is the output. If you see the output here, what is the output that you are seeing here? Role created. But as this is this a role? No, it is not a role. If you see the list of users or roles by using /du command, so Arman, so list of roles did you get? No. Otherwise, let me give you like /du plus will give you the detailed listing. Okay. Attributes, nothing. Okay. Now let me try to create a role. Okay. Create role. Okay. Create role Arman underscore read only. Okay, now observe it. When I give /du, Arman underscore read only. Okay, Arman underscore read only contains cannot log in, which means whenever you create any user with create role statement, okay, it comes with a no login privilege. But the output of the command is for both the things, it is a create role only. Okay, but we can make the role to login. Okay, but we can make the role to login by altering the role. How can we do? Alter role Arman with login. See now, let's do like /du. 1 minute. Sorry, not Arman, right? What it is? Alter role Arman underscore read only, right? Arman underscore read only with login. Alter role Arman underscore read only with login. Now do like /du. See, Arman score read only also having a, by default it is having a login privilege. If the user is a role is having a login privilege, then in the list of attributes it won't show anything. But this is a, because this is a default option. Okay, whenever you create a role or whenever you create a user, sorry, whenever we create a user, by default user is created with a login privilege. What are all the default privileges that user gets when we create? That we will be seeing it in a while. Okay, that we will be seeing it in a while. Okay, so there is, in Postgres conceptually there is no difference between role and login, but the only difference is role is by default role will not have a login privilege, but we can make the role to login by assigning a login privilege. And one more thing is, in any of the other RDBMS, what we can do, we can, so let's say I have a user. Okay, I have a user. Okay, I I have a user and I have a role. Okay, generally what we will do, role can be granted to user, right? In Postgres, a role can be granted to user and a role can be granted to other role, and user can be granted to role, and user can be granted to a other user. We can grant anyone to anything. Okay, there is no, but in Oracle we can't grant user to another user, right? But in Postgres we can grant one user to the another user. Okay, we can grant a role to a role, we can grant role to a user, we can grant user to a role, we can grant user to a user. All the operations are possible in Postgres, but there is no, I mean, restriction on granting one to one. Okay, we can grant anything to anyone. A user can be granted to another user, a role can be granted to another role, a user can be granted to another role, and a role can be granted to another user. So now, so we will be seeing how to create a user. Okay, how to create user. So this is the straight away syntax is create user, username. So create user, username. Okay, create user, username with password, with password, the password that you want to give, and the password you should keep it in a single quote. This is how we will be creating a user. Okay, this is how we will be creating a user. So we, you need to start, you need to give like with class and then followed by a, list of attributes and privileges that you wanted to give. Okay, what are the default that you will get? Okay, so whenever you create any user, okay, so let's say you use this statement. Okay, if you use this statement to create a user, then this user will have, okay, then this user doesn't then this user, what are the default options that that the user will get is, he will get the privilege like no create db. Okay, no create db, no create user, no create db, no create user. These are all the default options, and no replication. So these are all the default options he will get. Okay, okay, I means like a normal user will, whenever you use a create user, username statement, okay, a normal user will be created, a normal user will be created with the default privileges. What are all the default privileges that a normal user will have? Normal user will have a no create db privilege and no create user and no replacement, which means he will not be able to create a database, and he will not be able to create any other user, and he will not have a replication privilege. What does it mean by replication privilege? This replication privilege we will be discussing it in during the replication concepts. Okay, so whenever you create any user with the create user statement, a normal user, okay, a normal user will be created. Okay, so if you want to create, if you want to create any user, okay, if you want to create any user with the super user privileges, okay, now how you will do, then create user, create user, username, let's say the username is rman, and the with class is same, create user, username with, then I'll be giving like, I want this rman user to have a create db privilege, then with create db. Okay, and I want to have this user to create the users, then create user. Okay, create db, create user, and now at the last I will be giving password. Password I will be giving like test 1 2 3. This is how you need to give. Then the user rman will have then the user rman will be able to create the database, and the user rman will be able to create the user. Okay, these two privileges he will get. Okay, but if you don't mention, okay, if you don't mention these two, then a normal or ordinary user will be created. But we can later, if you want this rman user to have a create db privilege, you can alter the user and assign the privilege. Let's see this practically. Okay, so now let me clear the screen. Okay, so create user hurry with password Hari123. So I have created a user. Now let's do /du. Hari is a user and he doesn't have any privileges. Okay. Now what I'll do, I'll make Hari as a Hari to get the privileges of creating a database and get the privileges of creating a role. How I'll do? Alter user Hari. Okay. Alter user Hari with create db. Sorry. Alter user Hari with create db. So now let's do like /du Hari. See, he got the create db privilege, right? Now he got the create db privilege. Okay, if I want to remove this create db privilege again, then alter user Hari. Okay, alter user Hari with no create db. Now do like /du space Hari. See, he doesn't have a create db privilege. Likewise, we can grant the privileges and we can alter the privileges for a particular user. Okay, and one more thing that we need to discuss is how to list the users. Okay, how to list the users in Postgres. Okay, /du. Okay, /du will give you the list of, okay, list of users plus roles that are available in the Postgres cluster. Okay, and /du plus will give you the /du plus will give you the list of users plus roles with the detailed listing. It is a like it will give you the detailed listing. Okay, and what are the data dictionaries that we have in Postgres? What are the data dictionaries? What are the data dictionaries that we have in Postgres to what are the data dictionaries in Postgres to list the users and roles? Okay, we will be having two data dictionary tables from which we can get the role users and roles information. Okay, one is pg underscore user, one is pg underscore user, and second one is pg underscore roles. Okay, second one is pg underscore role. What is the difference between these? Pg underscore user is a data dictionary which contains, okay, which contains list of users, and roles who are having login privilege. Okay, who are having login privilege. Okay, so that this point is very important. Pg underscore user is a data dictionary table which contains a list of users and roles who are having a login privilege, whereas pg underscore roles contains all the users plus roles information. Okay, all the users plus roles information. Okay, this is very important. Okay, pg underscore user is a data dictionary table which contains list of users and roles who are having a login privilege, whereas pg underscore role is a data dictionary table which contains the all the users and roles that are available in the Postgres cluster. Now we will see all those things in a practical way. Okay, so let me clear the screen. Okay, so now what is the command to display the user? /du. Okay, right. So Hari is having a login privilege. Sorry, Hari is having a login privilege. Arman is having a login privilege. Arman underscore read only is having a login privilege. Okay, and let me create one more user. Alter user pgdba sorry, what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to create a role, so he will get a no login privilege, right? Create role pgdba, create role pgdb. So I have created a role. Okay, now slash du. Okay, so pgdbi is having a no login privilege, which means this entry is not supposed to be there in where pg underscore users table. As I said, pg underscore users is a data dictionary table which contains the roles and users information who are having a login privilege. Now select star from pg underscore user. See, we have a Postgres user, we have a rman, we have a rman underscore read only, and we have a hurry. But did we get the pg underscore dba? No. Why did not we get? Is like pg underscore users is a data dictionary table which contains the roles and users with the login privilege. Now we will be seeing all the attributes one by one. Okay, let me take a snippet of this. Okay, now we'll be seeing a one by one. Okay, so what is the first column? The first column talks about the username. Okay, it talks about the username. Second one is sysid, means it is a unique id which is assigned to each user. Okay, now use create db. So it talks about, okay, it talks about the create db privilege. It talks about what? Create db privilege. Okay, use create db true means that user is having a privilege to create the database. This is very important. Okay, so if a particular user is having a use create db privilege, that means that user is having a create db privilege. Okay, whereas rman user doesn't have, and rman underscore read only doesn't have, and hurry is doesn't have. Okay, and one more thing, use super user. It talks about whether the particular user is super user or not, whether the particular user is super user or not a super user. Okay, so he, in this case, what is true? Oh, the Postgres is the only user who is having a super user privileges. Okay, super user, when I say super user, this is like sysdb. Okay, and use ripple means it talks about the users, whether the user is having a replication privilege or not. Okay, it talks about the user is having a replication privilege or no replication privilege. Okay, in this case also, the only user which is having a replication privilege is Postgres. And password is always masked. Okay, and this is very important, and this is one of the important interview questions. So this is a valid until class. Okay, so valid until class talks about, okay, valid until class talks about till what time. Okay, till what time the password is valid, till what time password is, till what time the password is valid, which means once, let's say what we will do while creating a user, if we keep like any date or time, after that time if you try to log into that user with the same password what we have kept, no, it says like authentication failed because the password validity is expired. But in real time we don't use this valid until clause, because let's say if in oracle, right, let's say if there is a user u1 and you have granted this user with some profile p1. Okay, so let's say in that, okay, let's say in that there is a clause called like the let's say if the password is going to expire, no, you will, whenever you are trying to log in, you will get some notification or banner message saying in so and so days the password will be expired, right? That kind of message you will get. But in Postgres there is no such concept. Okay, though you kept a valid until class, it won't tell you about the expiry date of a user. Okay, the suddenly what will happen, the user, you will not be able to log in with the username and password until or unless you will check this pg underscore users table. You won't get the real reason behind it. Okay, but in oracle we will get some banner message saying in 10 days or in 5 days your password will be going to get expired. And also in oracle there is a concept of what, the password grace time and password lifetime and all those things will be there, whereas in the case of Postgres there is no such things, to avoid the confusion. Okay, so as we are not getting, okay, as we are not getting any banner message kind of thing or any communication from the valid until class. We prefer not to use this valid until to avoid the application outages, because let's say I have an application user and I kept valid until class to some date, and suddenly it gets expired. Okay, then the application will goes down, right? So that is the reason why we prefer not to use the valid until class in the Postgres. Though we have an option, we don't use it. Okay, and one more thing, the one more important point in Postgres is, like there is no concept of profile. Okay, there is no concept of profile. This is also one of the very important interview question. Like, so what is the difference between, so do we have any concept of profiling to implement the I mean to have like password complexity, or like, so let's say the password should be in so and so length and all those things will be there, right? That concept is not available in Oracle. The concept is the same concept is implemented using a concept of profiles, whereas in case of Postgres there is no concept of profiling. And user config, this is also very important. Okay, so let's say what we can do. So when we were discussing about the parameter, we have also discussed about some parameters we can keep it for the user. Okay, so we can keep it for a user. Okay, so whenever you keep, okay, whenever you change any parameter for a particular user, for that this information will be displayed. Okay, let me do one thing. Okay, for a user called Hari, what I'll do, I will change some parameter at the user level and we'll see what is happening. Okay, now what I'm doing, alter user Hari. Okay, set work underscore mem equal to, so what is the default work memory at instance level? 4 MB. Okay, instead of changing the work memory at instance level, okay, when I change a parameter work memory at instance level, what is going to happen? It is applicable to all the users. Okay, it is applicable to all the users who are available in, it is applicable to all the users who are available in the entire Postgres cluster. Whereas instead of doing that, what I am trying to do, I am trying to change, okay, I am trying to change the parameter work underscore memory for a particular user using alter user username set work underscore memory equal to 5 MB. This is what I am going to keep for a particular user Hari. Okay, right? Now let's do select star from username. Okay, now let's do select star from username, pg underscore user, sorry, select star from pg underscore user. See, so for that user Hari, we have defined a user level parameter as a user level parameter. So in the config section, what we got a work memory of 5 MB. Okay, now we will be trying to query a table called pg underscore roles. Select star from pg underscore roles. So as I said, like pg underscore roles is a data dictionary which contains, okay, pg underscore roles is a data which contains information about all the roles and which contains all the roles and users information. So you will see Hari user, we will see pgdba, rman read only, rman, and these are all the default roles that we will be having it in a Postgres. Okay, that we will be discussing in a while. Okay, these are all the default roles that we will be having it in a Postgres. Okay, now we will be discussing one by one. Role name is a role name. Role super user means it talks about whether the role is a super user or not. Okay, and this is very important. Role inherit. There is a concept of inherit and no inherit that we will be discussing it in a while. Okay, if the privilege is true, that means it can inherit the privileges. If this value is false, which means it cannot inherit. But there is an alternative way that is a separate topic and we will be discussing in today's class. Okay, and role create role, it talks about whether the current role is able to create a new role or not. Role create DB, okay, which talks about the role is able to create the database or not. Okay, role can log in, whether role can be able to log in or not. Role replication, whether the role is having a replication privilege or not. And role con limit, talks about how many number of connections a role can have. Okay, by default it is an infinite number, which means like it depends on the max underscore connections parameter. But if you want to limit the role to have a particular number of connections, then we can have it here. Role password, it talks about the password. Role valid until, it talks about the and password expiry. Role config is same as what we have discussed in the configuration, like user config. Okay, these are the different parameters. By seeing the name itself you can get what it is on. And so now the important topic that we need to discuss is concept of inherit and no inherit. Before doing that, okay, before doing that we will talk something about the valid until class. Okay, valid until class while creating a user or role. Valid until, so valid until talks about till what time. Okay, valid until talks about till what time the till what time the password is valid. Okay, so there is no I mean like different syntax for this. Just we will embed it with the create user statement. Okay, so create user username with password and valid until some date we will give. Okay, when we give some date, till this time the password will be valid. Once we are done with once we are beyond the behind the date, then whatever the password that the user is currently having, okay, whatever the password that the user is currently having, it will be no longer valid. Okay, it will be no longer valid. And okay, so now, so we have seen about how to create a user, and we have also seen about how to create a role. Okay, now we will be discussing about, so before talking about the privileges, right, before talking about the concept of inherit and no inherit, we will be discussing about the privileges. Okay, we will be discussing about the privileges. Okay, in Postgres the privileges are the privileges are by using a list of attributes we can identify the which user is having a what privileges, or which role is having a what privileges. Okay, let me talk about that. Okay, privileges. Okay, so let's say a table can have which privilege? Insert, right? A table can have insert privilege. Insert privilege is represented. Okay, insert privilege is represented with a attribute called small a. Okay, that we will be discussing in detail in the next class. Okay, but for now you need to remember this. Okay, insert privilege on a table is represented using an attribute called small a. And update privilege, okay, update privilege on a table is represented with a attribute called small w. Okay, select privilege, okay, select privilege on a table, select privilege on a table is represented with an attribute called small r. Okay, then then one more thing is usage. A schema can have usage privilege, right? Anyway, this we will be discussing in detail in the upcoming classes. Okay, usage privilege. Okay, usage privilege on a schema or on a sequence is represented using u represents the usage or usage privilege. Okay, privilege create a so there is a privilege called create on schema. Okay, if a user is having a create on schema privilege on a particular schema, he'll be able to create the objects. Okay, okay, then that is represented using a capital C. Capital C represents create. Okay, capital C represents create. Okay, connect on database. Okay, if the user is having a privilege called connect on a database, then only he'll be able to connect to the database. That is represented using small c. Small c represents the connect. Okay, small c represents the connect. A temporary privilege. Okay, if user have a temp privilege on the particular database, then only he'll be able to create the temporary tables. Then that is represented using a capital T. Okay, that is represented using a capital T. So if you want to create any trigger on a particular table, then user should have a create trigger privilege. So the trigger privilege is represented using a small t. Okay, and execute privilege is represented using X. Execute privilege is represented using X. And if a user is having all the privileges on a particular table, then it is represented using all. So in the privileges tab, if you see all for a particular table, that means that user is having all privileges on a table. This is how, okay, this is how we will represent the privileges using an attributes. Okay, the more about this we will be discussing it in a tomorrow's class. Yeah, that's it for today, and tomorrow I'll be continuing with the class, and we will be discussing about the concept of inherit and no inherit, and we will continue to do the privilege management for couple of days. Okay, thank you.